Ever wonder how someone picks up the pieces after their spouse shatters their trust? My story begins with the day I found those text messages. I was just looking for the weather app on Sarah's phone while she was in the shower. What I found instead changed everything. Messages that made it crystal clear she'd been seeing someone for months during her so-called late nights at work. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through their conversations, each message more intimate than the last. When Sarah stepped out of the bathroom, I was sitting on the edge of our bed, her phone in my hands. Her face went pale. I didn't even need to ask the question. We both knew what I'd discovered. She immediately broke down crying, clutching at my arm as she begged me to understand. "It was just a mistake," she sobbed, her mascara streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to happen. Please, give me another chance." When I pulled away, she grabbed my face between her hands, her eyes desperate. "You'll never find someone who loves you like I do," she insisted. "No one will ever understand you the way I do." The divorce happened quickly on paper, but the emotional aftermath was devastating. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with this overwhelming feeling of worthlessness washing over me. Was I not attractive enough? Not successful enough? Not interesting enough? These questions haunted me daily, making me question if I'd ever be enough for anyone again. The isolation was almost worse than the betrayal. Friends and family tried to understand, but unless you've had your trust completely shattered by the person who promised to love you forever, it's impossible to fully grasp that kind of pain. I felt like I was speaking a language no one around me understood. What made everything harder to bear was how quickly Sarah moved on. Before the ink was even dry on our divorce papers, she was bringing her mistake to family gatherings. Just weeks after we separated, there she was at Sunday dinner with her new boyfriend, laughing and holding hands like our 5 years of marriage had meant nothing. The complete lack of remorse was like being betrayed all over again. I almost stopped attending these family events altogether. Why subject myself to that torture? But Sarah's mother, who had always treated me like her own son, called me personally and insisted I remain part of the family. "What happened between you and Sarah doesn't change how we feel about you," she told me firmly. "You're still family to us." So I kept going, though these Sunday dinners became a strange kind of torture. I'd sit there pushing food around my plate while watching Sarah flaunt her new relationship across the table. The way she'd laugh too loudly at his jokes or touch his arm when speaking seemed deliberately designed to show me what I'd lost. Every smile, every touch was a reminder of my failure, both as a husband and as someone worthy of loyalty. I started dreading these gatherings with an intensity that made my stomach churn all week leading up to them. I'd rehearse excuses to skip them, then end up going anyway out of respect for Sarah's mother. Until one Sunday something changed. An unfamiliar face appeared at the table, Sarah's cousin Emma, who'd just moved back to town after years away. She sat down next to me, introduced herself with a warm smile, and asked me about myself as if I were more than just her cousin's ex-husband. That flicker was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as broken as I thought. I didn't go to those Sunday dinners expecting to meet someone new, especially not someone connected to Sarah. But life has a funny way of bringing light exactly when you're drowning in darkness. After Emma arrived that October evening, I found myself gravitating toward her at subsequent dinners. It wasn't planned, we just naturally ended up sitting next to each other, creating our own little island amid the sea of awkwardness. At first, we exchanged polite comments about the food or the weather, anything to fill the uncomfortable silences that seemed to follow me around the table. Then one Sunday, Emma mentioned finishing a thriller I'd been meaning to read. My face lit up, and before I knew it, we were deep in conversation about plot twists and character development. I couldn't remember the last time I talked about something other than my failed marriage or legal paperwork. "You know what I loved most about that ending?" Emma said, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "The way the author showed healing isn't linear. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back." I nodded, feeling seen in a way I hadn't in months. This wasn't just small talk anymore. Our conversations became the highlight of my week. We discovered shared tastes in indie films, true crime podcasts, and obscure bands no one else in the family had heard of. What struck me most was how Emma handled the elephant in the room. While everyone else either avoided mentioning the divorce or spoke about it in hushed tones, Emma acknowledged it existed without making it my defining characteristic. Instead of prying, she shared stories about her time in Boston, her work cataloging rare books at the library, and her backpacking adventures through Europe. She treated me like a whole person, not damaged goods. Soon our conversations spilled beyond Sunday evenings. I'd be at work when my phone would buzz with a message from Emma. "Just finished that book you recommended. You were right about the ending." Or I'd send her a link to an article about a new exhibit at the museum. These small exchanges became bright spots in my otherwise monotonous days. I couldn't help but notice Sarah's growing irritation across the dinner table. Her eyes narrowed whenever Emma and I laughed at an inside joke. "You two seem awfully cozy," she remarked one evening, her voice dripping with suspicion. "How nice of my family to adopt my leftovers." The comment stung, but part of me understood. Our natural connection highlighted what Sarah and I had lacked: a foundation built on genuine shared interests rather than just physical attraction. According to the research I later read, relationships that develop from friendships, especially those formed in shared gatherings, often evolve into partnerships that support healing after betrayal. After several weeks of this growing friendship, Emma texted me midweek. "That new bookstore downtown just got a first edition of the novel we were discussing. Want to meet for coffee Saturday and check it out?" I stared at my phone for what felt like hours. This was different, deliberate time together outside the safety of family dinner. My thumb hovered over the keyboard as I weighed the potential fallout. Would I be creating family drama? Was I ready to cross that line? Eventually, I typed, "I'd like that." That Saturday in the corner of a quiet cafe, surrounded by the scent of coffee and old books, 5 hours vanished in what felt like minutes. We discussed everything from childhood memories to dream vacations, carefully avoiding any mention of Sarah or the divorce. For the first time in months, I laughed without feeling guilty about it afterward. The connection between us wasn't built on escaping pain or seeking revenge. It was founded on something authentic and nurturing. What began as innocent coffee shop conversations evolved into something neither of us expected, creating a ticking time bomb in Sarah's family. For 3 months, Emma and I had been seeing each other away from those Sunday dinners. Secret lunch dates, movie nights, and long walks through the park where we felt safe from prying eyes. We were falling in love behind closed doors, building something real while Sarah continued to make cutting remarks about how I'd never move on. The weight of our secret was becoming harder to carry. Emma started bringing it up more frequently. "I'm tired of pretending we're just friendly acquaintances at dinner," she told me one evening as we sat on my couch watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures. "I want to hold your hand across the table. I want everyone to know this is real." I understood her frustration, but the thought of Sarah's reaction made my stomach twist into knots. "What if it tears your family apart?" I asked. "What if they feel like they have to choose sides?" Emma's solution was simple. Announce it at Sunday dinner. Just put it all out there like ripping off a bandage. I couldn't imagine anything more terrifying. Sarah had been particularly venomous lately, commenting to her mother loud enough for me to hear that I was clearly still hung up on her. The narcissistic satisfaction in her voice when she said these things made my blood boil, but I swallowed my pride each time. "Let's ease into it," I suggested instead. "No big announcement. We just stop hiding." We developed a strategy for the next family gathering, arriving together, sitting close, letting our hands touch when passing dishes. Small signals that would be noticed but wouldn't create an immediate confrontation. I was still terrified, but Emma's confidence gave me strength. The following Sunday, we put our plan into action. The moment we walked in together, I felt the shift in energy. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she watched Emma brush her hand against mine while hanging up our coats. Throughout dinner, we shared private smiles and inside jokes from our time together. The tension was palpable. I was reaching for the salt when Sarah's mother touched my arm and whispered, "Can I talk to you for a moment?" My heart sank. This was it, the fallout was beginning. She led me to the kitchen and closed the door. I braced myself for the gentle letdown, the "you should respect family boundaries" talk. Instead, she looked at me with genuine warmth. "I've seen how you look at Emma," she said, And how she looks at you. I haven't seen her this happy since she came back home. I stammered, trying to find the right words. I didn't want to cause problems for your family. I know it's complicated because of Sarah. She cut me off with a wave of her hand. Love isn't something you should ever apologize for. Not when it's real. She squeezed my arm. And I think what you two have is very real. With her blessing, a weight lifted. Emma and I decided that next Sunday would be the moment we stopped hiding completely. We didn't need a dramatic announcement. Just the truth, visible for everyone to see. The following week passed in a blur of nervous excitement. When Sunday arrived, dinner proceeded with the usual conversation, but the air felt charged with possibility. As the evening wound down and I prepared to leave, Emma followed me outside. The porch light illuminated the family gathered by the window, including Sarah, who was mid-conversation with her aunt. Emma took my hand and walked me to my car, stopping just before we reached it. She looked back at the house, then at me. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded, my heart pounding. She leaned forward and kissed me. Not a quick peck, but a real kiss that left no room for misinterpretation. Through the window, I caught Sarah's expression. First confusion, then shock as the champagne glass she was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. After that kiss in front of everyone, something amazing happened. The family actually rallied around us. Sarah's aunts hugged me tighter than usual, and her uncles patted my back with knowing smiles. They'd seen how Sarah had treated me throughout our marriage. The subtle put-downs, the dismissive comments, the neglect that I'd tried to ignore. They were genuinely happy I'd found someone who valued me. We got married in a small ceremony just 6 months later. We kept it small, just family and close friends in Emma's parents' backyard. When I saw her walking down that makeshift aisle, I couldn't believe how my life had transformed. Sarah didn't show, of course, but her mother stood proudly in the front row. Finding unexpected love after betrayal taught me something powerful. What I thought was the end of my story was actually just the beginning of something beautiful. Not as revenge against Sarah, but as proof that sometimes life's worst moments lead you exactly where you need to be.